are going to talk about an exciting topic in biology, cells. So basically, cells are nothing but the building blocks of all living organisms, may it be plants or animals or even us, human beings, right? So with today's session, we will talk about what are cells, the various types of cells. We'll talk about the plant cells and animal cells, their various parts and their functions. We would even talk about specialized cells and then eventually the level of organizations of cell to form a particular body, may it be a plant part or animal plant, all right? So let's get started. First thing first, what are cells? As I mentioned, cells are the tiny building blocks of any plant or animal's body or organism's body. So if you see through an microscope the body of any living organism, you will see so many tiny boxes, right? So these tiny boxes are nothing but the cells from which the particular organism is made up of. All right. So cells are so small that you cannot see it through your eyes alone, right? The basic part, the tiny parts, cells you cannot see. You can obviously see, your skin, your muscles, which are eventually made up of cells. But the tiniest part, that is cell, can be only seen via microscope. So when you try to see an organism or let's say a plant part through a microscope, it magnifies the view and that's where you are able to see the cells. Let's talk about the plant cells first and then we will move to animal cells. So now plant cells, every plant has its own building block. Those are the plant cells. All right. Now plant cells are usually rectangular in shape and they are larger than the animal cells. All right. So here's a diagram that shows you the plant cell and the various parts of it. Let's take a look at it one by one. So the first one is the cell wall. You see this outer wall, this part is the cell wall. So whenever you are gonna memorize about plant cells or you are gonna write about plant cells or think about it, you have to think through what are the parts, what those parts look like, or what is their structure and what is their function, right? So whenever we learn biology, any portion, any topic, important things are what is that you're learning about, what is its structure or how does it look or feel, and then function of it, right? So now plant cell has 7 main parts. All right, so let's see the first one, that is cell wall. Now cell wall is the rigid outer layer which is basically gonna give shape to your cell. All right, and within that shape all other parts are contained. All right, so the cell wall is the outer rigid layer that gives shape and protection to the cell. When I say protection to the cell, because all other parts which we are going to talk about, they are being protected by this cell wall. Okay, now within this cell wall you see another thin layer which is in this yellow color, right? This is nothing but the cell membrane, right? Now again, how does cell membrane look like, or what is its structure and its function? So cell membrane is thin flexible layer that surrounds the cytoplasm. All right, we'll see what is cytoplasm. So you see this internal green part right there, that is nothing but the cytoplasm. So cell membrane actually surrounds the cytoplasm and controls the movements of substances in and out. Okay, so cell membrane's function is control the in and out movement of the substances. When I say in and out of the cell. All right, so that is your cell membrane. Now this blue color part you see over here, right? This is the sap vacuole. Now as you see, sap vacuole is centrally located, right? And it basically stores all the water and nutrients as well as the waste into that particular cell. All right, so sap vacuole is something where the water, nutrients and waste are being stored for the cell. Okay, here's the cytoplasm. As I mentioned, all this green part that you see across the cell inside, it is a jelly-like substance. Okay, and within this jelly-like substance, all whatever organelles of the plant cells are, they are contained. Okay, so cytoplasm is kind of a jelly like substance in which you can find all other organelles of the plant cell. Now you see this purple color circle, and within that you have this dark blue one. This is nothing but the nucleus, and it's an important part of the plant cell because it controls all the activities of the cell. So whatever the plant cell is gonna do, the functions of the plant cell, may it be photosynthesis, right? So all those activities that a plant cell has to perform, those are being controlled by the nucleus. All right. Now we have chloroplast, the important part of the plant cells, because of which you see the plants are like leaves are green in color. So chloroplast is a part which contains chlorophyll. So you see these green color bodies over here. There can be multiple chloroplast in a plant cell, right? So these green color parts are chloroplast, and they are green in color because they contain the chlorophyll, and that's why the function of chloroplast is help in the photosynthesis. All right. And last but not the least is you are having mitochondria. Now this orange color bodies you see over here, these are nothing but the mitochondria. These are there to produce the energy of the cell, right? So cell is going to perform various activities, and obviously to perform any activity for a living organism, it needs some or other energy. And how this energy is being formed within a cell? With the help of mitochondria. So mitochondria is the part of plant cell which produces energy for the cell to perform various operations or activities. All right. So there are 7 basic parts of the plant cells: cell wall, cell membrane, sap vacuole, cytoplasm, nucleus, chloroplast, and mitochondria. Alright. When we move for animal cells now, you would see animal cells are pretty similar to plant cell, but they are simple. They are not having those many parts within the animal cell. Okay, so all animals are obviously made up of cells. The basic building block of animals also are cells. You won't imagine, but there are approximately 100 trillion cells in a human body. All right. And that's an approximate number. It can be more than that, right? And all these animal cells, as I mentioned, are similar to the plant cells, but they'll have fewer parts compared to plant cells. All right, let's take a look at it. So this slide shows you how a typical animal cell look like. Okay, without starting with what and all the parts are there, can you identify a few? I'm pretty sure you can identify these orange color bodies might be the energy centers, right? So these might be the mitochondria. And do you remember this circular central part, which is nothing but the brain of the cell? Yeah, that's nucleus. All right. So let's take a look one by one. In an animal cell, you see this jelly-like substance which is holding your nucleus and mitochondria, right? This is again the cytoplasm. Now you remember cytoplasm is there in plant cell also, and the function of cytoplasm is to hold all the organelles within the cell. Okay, then you have a cell membrane. Are we missing something? Compared to the plant cells, there was something more in plant cell. You had a cell wall. But now if you see in animal cell, there is no cell wall covering the animal cell. Okay. So animal cell does not have a cell wall, but it has this cell membrane as a thin layer, which again controls the movement of substances in and out of the animal cell. Okay. The functions remain same compared to the plant cell, which are having a specific rectangular structure. Animal cell does not have a cell wall. Okay, it directly has the cell membrane. Then we have nucleus. Nucleus is going to be the control center of the cell. It contains all the genetic materials and regulates all the cell activity. That's why it is called as brain of the cell also, because it contains all the genetic material of a particular animal for whom we are looking out for this cell, and then it regulates all the activities of the cell. Okay, last but not the least, the important thing, the energy center, that is mitochondria, right? Mitochondria is the is the part which produces the energy and provides that energy to the cell to perform various activities. All right, so the plant cell has 7 important parts. Animal cell, you just have 4 important parts. You are having cytoplasm, cell membrane, nucleus, and mitochondria, and these are common to plant cell also. Other than these four, there are 3 additional things in plant cell, which are your the chloroplast. You have sap vacuole there, right? Let's move to the next one, that is specialized cells. Now, the plant and animal cells we talked about, those are like generic plants and animal cells, how they look like, or what are their functions, what are their parts. Now, specialized cells are basically the cells which perform a specific job. Okay, so every organism would have certain specialized cells to perform a certain activity, and that's why they are called as specialized cells. Different cells have different shapes and structure. Now, as the name indicates, the specialized cells are gonna have some different shape and structure because they are intended to perform a certain activity or a special job. So the specialized cells would be adopted in their structure to perform that particular job or a particular activity into the organism. All right, so that's why the structure of these cells is going to help them to perform their job efficiently. All right, that's why they are going to have some different structures than the regular animal or plant cells what we have seen. Okay, plant cells are found in both animals and plants. As I mentioned, there are specific jobs. So every cell is gonna have, every organism is gonna have certain specialized cells to perform a given function. Okay, let's take a look at the animal specialized cells. Now there are 3 type of specialized cells in animals that we are going to learn today. The first one is red blood cells, which basically carry the oxygen across the body. Then we have nerve or neuron cells, which are there to send the messages, right, from the nervous system to every other part of the body to perform its function. Then we have ciliated cells, which are going to help to trap the dust and bacteria, which are typically being found within your trachea, right? Each cell is adapted for its function. That's the key thing for specialized cell, right? Because specialized cells are adapted to perform their functions. So that's why they have a special shape and special structure. Let's take a look at each of these in a little bit of details. So the red blood cells, we call it as RCBs also, generally talking, right? So these red blood cells perform a very important function of carrying the oxygen around the body, right? So the living organism who are inhaling oxygen, that oxygen is needed to be supplied to all parts of the body so that they continue functioning in a proper way, right? So to perform that function, there are special cells in the body which are called as red blood cells. These cells contain hemoglobin, and that's why they become red in color. Okay, and these are very small and flexible shapes because they should be running through all other organs, and in fact the small little capillaries from for the entire body to have the oxygen supplied, right? So these are small and flexible in shape. They do not have a nucleus for more space to carry oxygen. Okay, so the cell is so specialized that it does not even have a nucleus, but it carries its function appropriately to supply the oxygen around the body. The diagram below here is going to show you a top view as well as an indent. So you can see that this is small little circular shaped cell, okay, which is hemoglobin rich, right? So the cytoplasm in this is going to be consisting hemoglobin majorly, and that's why that hemoglobin is nothing but for forming your blood, right, and then carries the oxygen around the body. Okay, and it is biconcave in shape. this cell is biconcave in shape. You can see over here I have an indent shown here, right? So important thing to remember, red blood cells are there to carry the oxygen around the body. They contain hemoglobin, and important thing, how it makes it specialized, it has no nucleus so that it can hold more space to carry the oxygen. All right, let's move to the next specialized cell, that is your nerve or neuron cells. So this is how your neuron cells look like. Okay, and in neuron cells there are four important parts. Your cytoplasm is there as usual, like every other animal cell. Then you have a nucleus, and then you have dendrites, you have axon. All right, now the specialized function of neuron cells is to carry electrical signals. So every message which is being passed to various parts of the body are in the form of electrical signals. All right, so now these signals are supposed to be passed through some or other cell, right? So those cells which are carrying these electrical signals, which are holding some message to a particular part of the body to perform a given function or an action, the neurons are being used, and that's where the function of neurons is to carry electrical signals. It has a long extension to carry these messages, right? To send this, that long extension is nothing but your axon. This is what you see over here. It has a function of sending the messages. And then you have these dendrites. So now these dendrites are basically to receive the signals from all other neurons or nerve cells, right? And then it comes to nucleus, and be that particular signal is being carried through axon, and then towards end again you have some more dendrites kind of thing, which would be connected to another nerve cell or the organ. All right, so that's why the function of your neuron cells or nerves is the fast communication in the body. All right, that's all about neuron cells. Now let's talk about ciliated cells. So as I mentioned, ciliated cells are something which are found in trachea. Right now, as the name suggests, ciliated cells are going to have tiny hair-like structure on one edge, and that hair-like structure is called as cilia. Okay, these cilias move just like, a small little brush bristles. You can have the cilias moving. These movements create waves to push the substance along. Okay, these are found in the airways such as trachea. So when we inhale the oxygen, all right, there would be mucus being formed into the epithelium, and you will have cilia. Cilia basically traps the dust or bacteria which are going in, push them away so that you can get a filtered air towards your lung. So that's why ciliated cells help to move the mucus and trap dust away from the lungs. All right, so that's their important job, and that's why this hair-like structure with its movement help to trap the dust or the bacteria, and thus cleans up whatever we are inhaling that air, so that a clean dust-free air can go towards lung, and that's why it's on the part of your trachea path. Okay, so that's all about specialized cells in animals. Let's talk about specialized cells in plants. Now in plants you have two type of specialized cells that we are going to learn about: root hair cells and palisade cells. Now as similar to your animal cells, even in plants these cells are there to perform a specific job. Let's take a look. Palisade cells first. Here's what your palisade cell look like. So as it is a plant cell, the baseline structure would remain same like a palisade cell, but you'll see that this cell is having quite a few number of your chloroplast within it. Okay, so these palisade cells are typically found in the leaves, and what the leaves are containing, they are containing chloroplast or chlorophyll. All right, now if you see here, within the cytoplasm you see so many chloroplasts out there, okay, which are containing chlorophyll. So these cells are specialized to absorb the sunlight, for photosynthesis, and with the help of the chlorophyll within the chloroplast, they prepare the food for plant so that the plant can stay alive by getting the energy from the food which is generated by the process of photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis is typically absorbing the sunlight. The sunlight is being absorbed by the chloroplast and then chlorophyll, and then chlorophyll just tries to have the food energy generated for the plant cell, and that's where keeping the plant alive. All right, so that is the palisade cell. It typically found in leaves. Okay, and that's where we see that the leaves are green because of the chlorophyll, and leaves are the part where the photosynthesis takes place, generating the energy for plant to live. Okay, that's all about palisade cell. Now let's take a look at root hair cells. So if you look through a plant roots anytime, you'll see small hair like structure around the main root of any plant, right? You'll have some small thin hair like cells coming out. So those are nothing but the root hair cells. Okay, and the function of root hair cells is to absorb the water and minerals from the soil. So when if you try to pull out a plant from the soil, you could see around the main root, the thick root of the plant, there would be small tentacles kind of thing, right? These are nothing but the root hair cells, and they actually help to absorb the water and mineral from the soil and then pass it to the root and towards rest of the parts of the plant, making the plant absorb the water and minerals accordingly and live. Okay, so as the shape of this plant cell is like hair cell, so that's why this is a specialized cell. All right, you have all other parts as is how a general plant cell would have, but the important thing which makes this cell as a specialized cell is root hair extension. Okay, it is not like a rectangular general plant cell, it has a root like extension. That's why making it a specialized cell, because this root hair like extension helps to absorb the water and mineral from the soil. All right, so that's the root hair cell, a specialized cell for plant. Let's talk about the levels of organization of cells. So, as we discussed earlier, cells are the tiniest most part of any living organism's body. Okay, but these cells are combined together, forming, let's say, some other substance or some other structure, that is tissues, and then somehow you see a full either human or animal or plant body being formed. All right, so that is nothing but the organization of these cells into different parts and different ways, having a proper plant or animal or an or living organism formed. Okay, so these levels are from smallest to largest. Let's talk about first. You have the tiniest part, that is cells. When cells are grouped together, they'll form tissues. With the help of multiple tissues together combined, we get an organ being formed. An organ will perform its own functions. When multiple organs are working together, it would form an organ system, right? And when the multiple organ systems are grouped together and work together to have an organism form and make that organism a living thing. Okay, so the example over here is you will have a muscle cell. Okay, a common example of a muscle cell. Then you will have a muscle cell, then you will have muscle tissues, then you will have a heart form, like with a particular type of muscle tissues you will have heart, and then heart is a part of your circulatory system with all other organs, right? And circulatory system combining with all other system, let's say like excretory system, digestive system, and everything forms a human body. All right, so that is what is the organization of levels in any living organism. Okay, so what typically the organism has is specialized cells doing its job, right? And that's where keeping the organism do its functions correctly. Similar type of cells will end up forming a tissue. Now these tissues would be forming some or other organ, and that organ is entitled to do a certain function for an organism's body. And then multiple organs working together forms a system, making the living organism live, do its job, perform various activities when all these organ systems work together. All right, so those are the levels. Now let's take a brief look at each stage. So we are having tissues, right? So multiple similar cells, important thing, similar cells working together are going to form tissue. So I have an example of a plant tissue over here shown. So you have palisade tissues. So we had talked about the palisade cell, which is an individual palisade cell, okay, generating the food for the plant, right? With the help of chloroplast and the chlorophyll within it, with having the photosynthesis performed and making the food for the plant, right? Now you see over here multiple palisade cells combined together to form a palisade tissue. That's why tissue is a group of similar cells working together. Tissues perform a specific functions, obviously, as they are made up of similar cells. They'll have a specified job to do. The cells in tissue are specially adapted to carry out a same job efficiently, right? So a tissue is formed, or this tissue is being formed by palisade cell. All cells are palisade cells. So what is going to be the function of this tissue cell is basically supporting in photosynthesis. All right, so that's your tissues. Now let's say we have organ. Now what is an organ? An organ is made of different tissues working together. So when tissues come together and try to perform a particular function, that forms an organ. So organs carry out the major functions in the body, like your heart or maybe your lungs. So these are nothing but the organs formed by typical type of tissues which are working together, so making that organ perform a particular function. Okay, now if we go for multiple organs, then multiple organs working together will form an organ system, right? Now organ systems are groups of organs working together. For example, let's say you have digestive system, or you have respiratory system, you have circulatory system. Now in respiratory system, as we talked about heart earlier as an organ, let's talk about respiratory system. Now heart is a part of respiratory system. Then you have your trachea, you have your lungs, then you have your heart. There are multiple veins and arteries to perform the function of respiration completely and passing the oxygen throughout the body, right? So that is a respiratory system, a system of multiple organs working together to carry out a particular function is organ system. Yeah, so the last stage of our organization of the levels is like organ to organ system, and then from organ system we end up getting a living organism. All right, so that's pretty much for today's session, guys. We have talked about right from the basic building blocks like cells, multiple types of cells and their functions and their parts. We even talked about certain specialized cells in animal and plant cells, and we talked about the levels of organisms, or levels of organization, sorry, for cells till the organ system and eventually forming an organism. All right, that's pretty much for today. We have a quick quiz link added onto the description. Try yourself out. Let us know your comments. Thank you so much for watching.